Welcome back. In this video, we are going to learn how to monitor AKS cluster using Azure Log Analytics Workspace and Grafana. Let's say that you have configured your AKS cluster and you have deployed some Docker containers. Now you are wondering how to capture CPU usage, how to get memory usage. How do you create those pod metrics, right? That's exactly what we are going to learn in this video. If you look at my website here, there are many different ways you can monitor AKS cluster. You can monitor AKS cluster using Azure Log Analytics Workspace and Grafana. That's exactly what we are going to talk about in this video. So I will come back to that in a minute. Or you can also monitor AKS cluster using Prometheus and Grafana. So you can install Prometheus KubeStack and then you can monitor your AKS cluster. Or you can also leverage Azure Monitor as well. Azure Monitor has a lot of capabilities to monitor AKS cluster and then other Azure resources such as virtual machines and whatnot. So you can also leverage Azure Monitor as well. But scope of this video is to monitor AKS cluster using Azure Log Analytics Workspace and Grafana. So let's try to understand what do you mean by Azure Log Analytics Workspace. Basically, it's a logical storage unit. That is where all the logs data, metrics, everything is captured for all the Azure resources. Let's say that you have set up your virtual machine in Azure Cloud, or let's say you have configured your AKS cluster. So you can leverage Log Analytics Workspace for capturing all the data and then to store the data, and then you can manage the data. Right? So that's the beauty of this Azure Log Analytics Workspace. So you can consider this as a folder which has all the monitoring data, everything is captured and managed. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, so we are going to use this Log Analytics Workspace in order to monitor AKS cluster. And then whenever you set up this workspace, what this will do is this will install agent on the AKS cluster. So which is going to capture all the data and it is going to send it over here. You would be able to, monitor the data. You would be able to visualize the data, right? So that's exactly what we are going to talk about in this video. All right, so let's get started. So let's quickly go over the prerequisites. So of course you need to have Azure subscription, okay? And then you also need to have Azure CLI installed because we are going to create the AKS cluster and we are going to create Log Analytics Workspace. And then, we are going to perform some commands using Azure CLI. And then, of course, you also need to have Helm installed as well because we are going to install Grafana using Helm. Okay, so these are the prerequisites. Okay, and then how we are going to approach this particular lab exercise. So we need to create a resource group in Azure Cloud. So obviously, right, anything you do in Azure, any kind of a resources you're creating in Azure Cloud. So the first thing is what, of course, you need to have Azure subscription and then you need to create a resource group. So we would be creating a resource group for this particular demo. And then we would also create Log Analytics Workspace. Okay. And then we are going to create a new AKS cluster with monitoring enabled. And then whatever the Log Analytics Workspace we created, we are going to get that ID of that. And then we are going to associate that Log Analytics Workspace ID with the AKS cluster. And then we are going to configure kubeconfig in order to access the AKS cluster. And then we'll be creating a service principal with Log Analytics reader role. So this is very important. So we need to have a service principal which is going to have all kind of a permission in order to pull the the logs and metrics from the Log Analytics Workspace. So we need to have that service principal created, and then we are going to install Grafana on the AKS cluster. Okay, so we are going to install Grafana on AKS cluster using Helm, and then we are going to configure Grafana with the port forward so that we can access Grafana locally using port number 3000. Okay, and then we would be accessing that locally. We'll be creating a data source for pulling the data from AKS, right? So that is what this data source is for. And then of course, once the data source, everything is created, we are going to create a dashboard and then we are going to, view those data, right? CPU usage, memory usage, all kind of report in Grafana as well. And then of course, we will also view the pod metrics data as well in Grafana. Awesome. So let's get started. So folks, this is my website, coachdevops.com. I will be posting the link right below the video as well. So the first thing is we have to create AKS cluster with monitoring enabled. So let's get started. So I'm going to open up my item. So this is my item. So as I was saying in the prerequisites, so I did have Azure CLI install, and then I also have Helm install as well, Helm 3 actually, right? So version 3, as you can see here. So everything is good. So now let's go ahead and create all the resources what we need. So like I said in the demo, so like we discussed, we are going to create a resource group in Azure. So let's go ahead and then get started. So we need to first log in into Azure Cloud. So type AZ login, and then I'm going to select my credentials. And then as you can see here, I'm successfully logged in into Azure. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and then create a resource group. So this is the resource group what I'm going to create. So this is the name of the resource group, and then this is the location. So let me go ahead and then copy that. Okay. So there you go. So as you can see here, we were able to create the resource group. Perfect. And then let's go ahead and then create Azure Log Analytics Workspace. So how do you do that? So as you can see here, this is the command. Okay. So we are going to create Log Analytics Workspace. This is the name of the workspace. And then we are going to create this workspace under the same resource group what we just created, a few seconds ago. Okay. And then if you see here, this is also the output of this command also going to give us log analytics workspace ID as well. So we would also get that. So let me go ahead and then copy this command. Let's go ahead and then enter. So as you can see here, wow, see here. So this has created log analytics workspace, and then we were able to get the log analytics workspace ID as well, right? So whatever the ID associated with that. Perfect. Okay, very good. Now what we can do, we can go ahead and then create AKS cluster with the 2 worker node, and then we would also go ahead and then enable monitoring as well. So like I said, we are going to create brand new AKS cluster, but let's say you already have AKS cluster setup, you can still do that. You can create log analytics workspace, and then you can associate log analytics workspace to that AKS cluster, and then you can still capture log and metrics, but we are going to create a new cluster. Okay, so how do you create the new AKS cluster? So again, same thing, right? So we are going to copy that. Okay, and then like I said, we are going to associate the workspace ID, right? So that is actually nothing but the output of the previous command, which is nothing but this. Okay, so go ahead and then paste that. There you go. Make sure you give space here. Let me just do that right now. Okay, like that. Enter. So now this will go ahead and create AKS cluster with monitoring enabled, and then this will also go ahead and then associate workspace log analytics workspace ID with the AKS cluster as well. So this might take a minute or two. So I'm going to pause the video and then come back. All right. So as you can see here, the operation is complete. So this should have created AKS cluster and everything. So let's go into Azure portal. Okay, so this is my Azure portal. Click on resource groups. There you go. So this was the resource group what we just created. Wow, see here guys. So we were able to see the AKS cluster, and then this is also log analytic workspace. And then of course this also created this as well. So this is actually part of it. Perfect. So let me go back to the instructions. Very good. So now we are going to access the cluster using kubectl command. So let me go ahead and then perform this particular command. Actually, this will show the details about the cluster. Okay, very good. and then we want to connect to the cluster. So I'm going to perform this particular command, which is going to update the kubeconfig entry. Okay, but before that, let me go ahead and then remove the existing kubeconfig. There you go. Let me go ahead and then execute that command. Awesome. You see here, so the kubeconfig entry has been created over here. Okay, so now what I can do, I can go ahead and then query the cluster. Okay, there you go. See here, guys. So we were able to get the node information, right? So yeah, so we created AKS cluster with 2 worker nodes. So these are the worker node. Of course, I have not deployed anything yet. So that's the reason why it says that no resource found. Perfect. So far so good, guys. So basically what we have done so far is we were able to create the resource group. We created log analytic workspace. We created a new AKS cluster with the monitoring enabled, and then we also associated log analytic workspace ID with that. And then we were able to, create a kubeconfig entry. And then the next thing is we have to go ahead and then create service principal. Okay, with this particular role. Okay, we are going to create a service principal with this particular role. Okay, and then that particular role has to be, it should have assignment under the scope of your resource group ID, right? So we need to first get the resource group ID. Okay, resource group ID of this one. So let me go ahead and then execute this particular command, which is going to get the resource group ID. So this is nothing but this one. Of course, you can also get the resource group ID by going into Azure portal as well. So when you click on JSON view of your resource group, so this is what I'm talking about. So that is your resource ID for your resource group, what we just created a few minutes ago. Okay, so perfect. So we got that. So now we are going to go ahead and then create service principal with this particular role, and then the scope of that would be this particular resource group. Okay, so let me copy this command. Okay, and then between scopes, we are going to go ahead and then provide this information. Okay, all right, there you go. So what this will do is this will go ahead and then create a service principal, and then with this particular role. Okay, perfect. So whenever it does, it is also going to go ahead and then provide the app ID, all this information, right? So which we will be using while creating the data source in Grafana. Okay, perfect. So let's save this information. Okay, this is important. So you can save this in a place where no one can access to it, right? All right, so let's move on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and then install Grafana, right? So we have to install Grafana as well. So like I said, we are not going to install Prometheus stack. So we are going to install Grafana alone itself, because we are going to use log analytic workspace for pulling the data, and then we are going to use Grafana for visualizing the data. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and then add this. So I want to first add the charts to my repo. So this already exists, no problem. And then if you want to search, you can search it. Okay, there you go, right? So we are going to go ahead and then install this one. Okay, so this is the Grafana stack which we are going to install. Okay, so for that, what we have to do is we need to go ahead and then create monitoring. But before that, what I wanted to do, I want to save this information. Okay, I want to save this information. So let me save this over here. Okay, I want to save this information over here. Okay, so we will come back to this. Okay, so let me go ahead and then create a namespace. Okay, so I want to create a namespace called monitoring. Okay, very good. So namespace got created, and then of course you can also view it like this. Okay, so as you can see here, this namespace got created. Okay, very good. So now we want to go ahead and then install Grafana. So like I said, we are going to install this particular entry, right? So let's go ahead and then install, and we are going to install under monitoring namespace. There you go. So this went ahead and then install. So of course now you can view it as well, right? So if you try to get the pods, that is the workspace name, monitoring. There you go. So it's going to take probably 15 to 30 seconds for pods to be up and running. So let's give a few more seconds. There you go. So it is actually up and running. Wonderful. Okay, so now the next step would be to access Grafana. So how do you access Grafana? So this is where we are going to use port forwarding. So I'm going to go ahead and then copy this command. And then what is the pod name for Grafana? That is the pod name. Okay. And then we are going to forward to port number 3000. There you go. So as you can see here, we were able to do that. Okay. But I forgot to tell you one thing before we do that. So we also need to get Grafana password as well. So for example, if you try to access Grafana, so you see here, right? So we all know the default username, which is admin, but the password needs to be fetched from this. We need to get the password. So for that, this is the command which we have to enter. So let's do one thing. I'm going to open up another shell for that, or otherwise you can Control C and then exit, and then you have to redo that. But I don't want to do that. So there you go. You see here. So I was able to perform this particular command. So this is the password for Grafana. Okay. So let me go ahead and then log in into Grafana. So admin is the username and this is the password. Go ahead and click on login. Wow, there you go, guys. See here, guys. So I was able to log in into Grafana right now. Perfect. So everything is good so far. Okay. All we have to do is go ahead and then create a data source in Grafana to pull the data from AKS cluster, right? So let's go into Grafana. So click on the settings and click on the data sources. Okay, so click on add data source and then look for Azure. Type Azure, click on Azure Monitor. So we are going to add this data source. Wow, see here, guys. So all we have to do is go ahead and then provide all these entries, so which we have already captured here, right? So when you created a service principal, this was created. Of course, I also stored that here as well, no problem. So let me go ahead and then fill that information from here. So this is the app ID. So that is nothing but this one. Okay. And then this is the password. That is actually nothing but secret over here, client secret. And then this is the tenant ID. Let me pick up the tenant ID, which I'm going to put that here. Perfect. So let me click on load subscriptions. There you go. You see here, guys. So it was able to load the subscription, and then go ahead and then click on save and test. Okay, so some issues, insufficient access error. Okay, this problem should not come, but let me try one more time. Okay, I don't see any problem with that, with what we have done so far. Application ID. Okay. There you go. See here, guys. So everything is good. So click on save and test. Okay. Awesome. So we were able to create this data source. Wonderful. Now all we have to do is go ahead and then create dashboard. So how do you create Grafana dashboards? Okay. So what I'm going to do, go ahead and then click on this 4 squares here, click on import. Okay. And then we are going to provide, the dashboard ID, right? So we have, there are some default Grafana dashboard, which you can create. So one of them is, I believe, 10956. Let me verify here. Yeah, 109956. Okay. So click on load and then click on import. Wow. See here, guys. Now we are able to see the cluster CPU usage as well as cluster memory usage. Wow, look at that, right? So we're able to see the data, and then let's also go ahead and then create one more dashboard as well. You can discard, click on import. So let's go ahead and then put 14891. There you go. Click on load. Click on Azure Monitor. Click on import. Wow. See here, guys. Now we are able to see pretty much all the pods which are all deployed inside our AKS cluster. Look at that, guys. And then if you want to change the namespace, and we have created monitoring namespace, right? So you can click on it. So then it is going to show only those parts. So as you can see here, only one pod is deployed under that namespace. So that's the reason why you just see only one pod, right? And of course, it's going to take some time to fill up all this data and whatnot, right? So I mean to fill the matrix. So this is the system namespace, kube system namespace. As you can see, a lot of parts deployed as part of that, right? And then of course you can always go back like this, and this was the first dashboard what we created. It's going to take some time to show all the data, guys. All right. Yeah, so that is how, guys, that is how you can configure your AKS cluster to monitor data using Log Analytic Workspace and Grafana. So before I let you all go, so how to clean this up, right? Because yes, we did create this AKS cluster, especially when you're creating any resources in Azure Cloud, you want to make sure that you're not being charged so much, right? So of course, what you can do, you can go ahead and then perform this command. What this will do is this will clean up all the resources, including what AKS cluster, including Log Analytic Workspace, and then any supporting resources under that resource group. Everything will be created. So let's go ahead and then execute this in order to clean up whatever we have done so far, and it's going to take some time. And then last but not the least, what I also have done is, since we have executed a lot of commands, what I have done is I have created a shell script. So if you see here, I have created a shell script which can do some level of automation for you, right? So if you see here, whatever we have done, like creating a resource group, creating Log Analytic Workspace, and then creating AKS cluster with monitoring enabled, and then associate Log Analytic Workspace ID, and then of course try to get the kubeconfig entry, and then creating service principal with this role, right? So everything I have created a shell script. All you have to do is just create a script, and then you will be able to execute all of this thing. So I have done that over here in my machine. So if you see here, I have created a script like this. You see here, right? So I have created everything over here. And then all you have to do is just go ahead and then execute the script, right? So which will do the job for you. And then of course, you can create, a Grafana namespace, and then you can just do few additional tasks manually, right? So yeah, so that's it, guys. That's how you can monitor your AKS cluster using Azure Log Analytic Workspace and Grafana. Thank you for watching this video.